The revolutionary act of rest, reclaiming our power through radical self-care. Welcome to the Black CEO podcast, where we dive deep into the transformative ideas shaping our world. I'm your host, and today we're in for a treat that's going to shake up everything you thought you knew about success, productivity, and self-care. We recently had the extraordinary privilege of sitting down with Elizabeth McCoy, a visionary licensed therapist and the founder of the Luxury Recharge Collective. Now, let me tell you, Elizabeth isn't just any therapist. He's a revolutionary thinker who's challenging the very foundations of how we approach work, life, and well-being, especially for Black women and other marginalized communities. Her work is quite literally changing lives, one restful moment at a time. Elizabeth's impact goes far beyond her therapy practice. She's igniting a movement that's redefining success and empowerment for a whole generation. Her Luxury Recharge Collective isn't just a business. It's a radical act of love and resistance in a world that often pushes us to our limits. Through her work, Elizabeth is not just talking about change. She's creating it, empowering countless individuals to reclaim their right to rest, and in doing so, transforming communities and challenging systemic inequalities. The insights Elizabeth shared with us were nothing short of revolutionary, and I can't wait to unpack them with you today. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and prepare to have your perspective shifted. Because after this conversation, you'll never look at rest the same way again. Now, let's dive in. Have you ever found yourself running on fumes, giving every ounce of your energy to others while neglecting your own needs? If you're nodding your head right now, know that you're not alone. In fact, you're part of a silent majority, especially if you're a Black woman. For generations, we've been celebrated, or should I say typecast, as the unshakable pillars of our families, businesses, and communities. We wear titles like the strong one, the fixer, or the leader, like badges of honor. And don't get me wrong, there's power in those identities. But here's the kicker. They often leave us depleted, running on empty, forgetting a simple yet revolutionary truth that Elizabeth hammered home in our conversation. Rest is a right, not a reward. Let that sink in for a moment. Rest is a right, not a reward. How many of us have internalized the toxic belief that we can only rest after we've achieved perfection, after we've solved everyone else's problems, after we've climbed every mountain and conquered every challenge? It's time to disrupt this myth. And that's exactly what we're here to do today. The message I want to burn into your consciousness today is this. Rest is not just a luxury. It's not just self-care. Rest is a revolutionary act of self-love, healing, and empowerment. It's time we reclaim our energy, our creativity, and our joy. It's time we build lives that aren't defined by burnout, but by balance and thriving. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, rest? In this economy with these responsibilities? Girl, please, trust me, I get it. The world doesn't stop spinning just because we need a break. But here's the thing. It's precisely because the world keeps spinning that we need to prioritize rest. Let's talk about why this matters so much. Culturally, we've been conditioned to overperform and overdeliver. The strong Black woman archetype, while rooted in resilience, has also burdened us with impossible standards. Whether we're leading in boardrooms, raising families, or navigating the exhausting minefield of microaggressions, the constant demand to be on comes at a steep cost. Mental exhaustion, physical ailments, and dreams deferred or abandoned altogether. Elizabeth shared a story that really drives this point home. She told me about a client of hers. Let's call her Amara. Amara was the epitome of what society considers successful. She was a high-powered executive, a devoted mother of two, and a pillar of her community. From the outside, she was living the dream, but behind closed doors, Amara was crumbling. She would wake up at 5 a.m., power through a 12-hour workday, come home to help with homework and household chores, then stay up until midnight catching up on emails. Weekends were a blur of community events, family obligations, and more work. Amara couldn't remember the last time she'd taken a real day off, let alone a vacation. One day, in the middle of a crucial presentation, Amara's body decided it had had enough. She collapsed right there in the boardroom. The diagnosis? Extreme exhaustion and stress. It was a wake-up call, not just for Amara, but for everyone around her who had been benefiting from her ceaseless energy and generosity. This story isn't unique. In her work with the Luxury Recharge Collective, Elizabeth has seen this pattern play out time and time again. Burnout quietly steals from ambitious, high-achieving women, eroding our peace, our health, and even our relationships. But here's the beauty: we can stop the cycle. Rest isn't about laziness.
It's about liberation. When we rest, we honor the fullness of who we are and create space for clarity, creativity, and connection. So how do we redefine rest in a world that seems to demand our constant attention and energy? Elizabeth shared 3 key principles that I want to break down for you. 1, rest without guilt. This is a big one, folks. How many times have you laid down to take a nap and found yourself making a mental list of all the things you should be doing instead? How often have you apologized for taking a day off or felt the need to justify your downtime? It's time to put an end to that nonsense. Resting doesn't make you less capable or less committed. It's not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Rest is an investment in your future self. Imagine your mind as a garden. Rest is the rain that allows seeds of creativity and strength to bloom. Elizabeth shared another powerful story about a client we'll call Zora. Zora was a brilliant artist who felt guilty every time she wasn't creating. She'd work herself to exhaustion, then crash, only to beat herself up for not being productive during her downtime. It was a vicious cycle that was not only affecting her mental health, but also stifling her creativity. Through her work with Elizabeth, Zora learned to reframe rest as an essential part of her creative process. She started scheduling rest days into her calendar, treating them with the same importance as her studio time. The result? Not only did her mental health improve, but her art reached new levels of depth and innovation. By allowing herself to rest without guilt, Zora tapped into wells of creativity she didn't even know she had. 2, rest as power. This principle is a game changer, especially for Black women and other marginalized groups. Historically, rest has been seen as a privilege, something reserved for those who could afford it. But Elizabeth challenges us to see it differently. For us, rest is an act of reclamation. It's a way of saying, my worth is not determined by my productivity. When we rest, we challenge oppressive systems that demand constant productivity at our expense. Think about it. In a world that often tries to diminish our worth, taking time for ourselves is a radical declaration of our value. Elizabeth told me about a group of Black female lawyers she worked with who decided to challenge the toxic culture of their firm. These women were routinely expected to work 80-hour weeks, sacrificing their health and personal lives for the job. Inspired by the idea of rest as power, they banded together and started setting firm boundaries around their time. They stopped answering emails after 7 p.m. They began taking their full lunch breaks, using that time to meditate or simply breathe. They used their vacation days unapologetically. At first, there was pushback, but as time went on, something remarkable happened. Not only did their work not suffer, but it improved. They were sharper, more creative, and more effective. Their actions started a ripple effect throughout the firm, challenging long-held assumptions about work and productivity. This is what rest as power looks like. It's not just about feeling better, although that's important too. It's about dismantling systems of oppression that have long profited from our exhaustion. 3, rest in community. This principle acknowledges that systemic change doesn't happen in isolation. You don't have to recharge alone. In fact, rest is richer when shared. That's why sisterhood matters. When we rest together, we rise together. Elizabeth shared a beautiful example of this principle in action. She told me about a group of Black women entrepreneurs who formed what they called a Rest Revolution Circle. Every month, they would gather to practice collective rest. Sometimes this looked like a group meditation session. Other times it was a weekend retreat where they unplugged from technology and reconnected with nature and each other. But it wasn't just about these gatherings. These women also held each other accountable in their daily lives. They would check in on each other, celebrating when someone set a healthy boundary or took time for self-care. They shared resources and strategies for incorporating rest into their busy lives. The impact was profound. Not only did these women report feeling more rested and centered, but their businesses thrived. They found that when they gave themselves permission to rest, they had more energy and creativity to pour into their work. Moreover, they were modeling a new way of being for their employees, clients, and communities. This is the power of resting in community. It's about creating a culture where rest is normalized and celebrated, where we lift each other up instead of competing to see who can burn out first. Now, I know some of you might be thinking that this all sounds great in theory, but how do I actually make it happen? I'm glad you asked. Elizabeth shared some practical, actionable steps that we can all start implementing today. First, there's the power pause. This is something you can do right now, wherever you are. Take 5 minutes, yes, just 5 minutes, to sit quietly. No phone, no multitasking, just breathe. Notice how your body feels. Pay attention to your thoughts without judging them. This simple practice can reset your nervous system and bring you back to center. Elizabeth shared a story about a client, let's call her Maya, who was skeptical about the power pause at first. Maya was a busy mother of 3 and ran her own consulting business. She couldn't imagine how 5 minutes of doing nothing could make a difference. But she agreed to try it for a week. To her surprise, Maya found that these brief pauses became the most grounding moments of her day. She started looking forward to them, and even her kids noticed a difference in her energy. Mom seems calmer, her oldest told her husband. This small change had a ripple effect on her whole family dynamic. The beauty of the power pause is that it's accessible to everyone. You don't need special equipment or a lot of time. You can do it at your desk, in your car, before you start your commute, or even in the bathroom. If that's the only place, you can get a moment of privacy. It's a powerful reminder that rest doesn't have to be elaborate to be effective. It's about creating small pockets of peace in your day. Next, Elizabeth recommends setting a rest boundary. This is about protecting your energy by saying no to things that don't serve you. It could be as simple as deciding not to check your work email after 7 p.m., or it could be declining an invitation to an event that you know will leave you drained. Elizabeth told me about a client, let's call her Aisha, who was known as the yes woman in her circle. Aisha was always the one organizing events, volunteering for extra projects at work, and being everyone's shoulder to cry on. She was exhausted, but felt guilty about saying no to anyone. Working with Elizabeth, Aisha learned to set rest boundaries. She started small, saying no to 1 extra commitment a week. At first, it felt uncomfortable. She worried people would think she was selfish or that she didn't care. But something amazing happened. People respected her boundaries. In fact, many admired her for it. By saying no to things that drained her, Aisha was able to say yes to things that truly mattered to her. She had more energy for her family, her work performance improved, and she even found time to start the blog she'd been dreaming about for years. Remember, every time you say no to something that doesn't align with your well-being, you're saying yes to yourself. It's not selfish. It's necessary. Finally, Elizabeth suggests starting each day by asking yourself, what do I need? It's a simple question, but it's powerful. When you listen to yourself, you honor your needs unapologetically. Maybe you need an extra hour of sleep, a nourishing meal, or a moment of solitude. Whatever it is, acknowledge it, and whenever possible, honor it. This practice is about tuning into your own needs instead of always prioritizing others. It's about recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup. By taking care of yourself first, you're actually better equipped to show up for others in your life. Elizabeth shared a powerful personal story that really drives home the importance of rest. She described a time in her own life when she was at the top of her game professionally, running a successful therapy practice, speaking at conferences, writing a book, but she was exhausted. She prided herself on being the go-to person for everyone in her life, always available, always solving problems. One day she found herself sitting in her car in the parking lot of a grocery store, sobbing uncontrollably. She was supposed to be picking up ingredients for a dinner party she was hosting, but she couldn't bring herself to leave the car. At that moment, she realized she had nothing left to give, not to her clients, not to her family, not even to herself. This breakdown became her breakthrough. Elizabeth realized that she had been living by a set of rules that prioritized everyone else's needs above her own. She had bought into the myth that rest was a luxury she couldn't afford. But in that parking lot, she made a decision to revolutionize her relationship with rest. She started small, setting boundaries around her work hours, scheduling regular massages, and most importantly, learning to say no without guilt. As she integrated more rest into her life, she noticed something remarkable. Not only did her energy and mood improve, but she actually became more productive and creative in her work. By giving herself permission to rest, she unlocked a level of performance and fulfillment she hadn't known was possible. This story resonated with me deeply, and I bet it resonates with many of you too. How many of us have pushed ourselves to the brink wearing our exhaustion like a badge of honor. How many times have we said yes when our bodies and minds were screaming no? The truth is, rest isn't just a personal practice, it's a movement. When black women rest, we transform not only our lives, but the systems around us. We become role models for sustainable success. We break generational cycles of exhaustion. We show the world that we can lead with strength and softness. Now, I want to address something that might be coming up for some of you. You might be thinking, this all sounds great, but I don't have the time or resources to prioritize rest. I hear you. The reality is that many of us are juggling multiple responsibilities, often with limited support. But here's what I want you to consider. Rest isn't always about taking a luxury vacation or spending a day at the spa, although those things are wonderful if you can do them. Rest can be found in small moments throughout your day. It might be taking 3 deep breaths before you start your car in the morning. It could be enjoying your coffee in silence for 5 minutes before the kids wake up. Maybe it's turning off your phone for an hour in the evening and reading a book just for pleasure. The key is to start where you are with what you have. Elizabeth emphasized that rest is a practice, not a destination. Just like any skill, it takes time to cultivate. Be patient with yourself as you learn to prioritize your well-being. Remember, you're unlearning generations of conditioning that told us our worth is tied to our productivity. Another powerful point that Elizabeth made is about the ripple effect of rest. When we prioritize our own rest and well-being, we give others permission to do the same. Think about it. How many times have you admired a friend or colleague who seems to have good boundaries and takes care of themselves? By embracing rest, we become beacons for others, showing them what's possible. This is particularly important for those of us in leadership positions. When we model healthy rest practice, we create work cultures that value well-being. We show our teams that taking breaks, using vacation time, and having a life outside of work isn't just allowed, it's encouraged. This leads to more engaged, creative, and loyal employees. But the benefits of rest extend far beyond the workplace. When we're well rested, we show up differently in all our relationships. We have more patience with our children, more presence with our partners, and more energy for our communities. We're better equipped to handle life's challenges and more open to its joys. Elizabeth shared a beautiful metaphor that I want to pass on to you. She said, think of yourself as a well. You can't keep drawing water from an empty well. Rest is how you replenish your well, allowing you to continue giving from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. I love this image because it reminds us that rest isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's what allows us to continue being there for the people and causes we care about. When we're depleted, we have less to give. But when we're rested and recharged, our capacity to love, to create, to lead, and to inspire expands exponentially. Now, I want to circle back to something I mentioned earlier, the idea of rest as a revolutionary act. In a world that often tries to limit and define us, choosing rest is a form of resistance. It's a way of saying, I define my worth, not my productivity. It's a reclamation of our time, our energy, and our right to thrive, not just survive. Think about the historical context for a moment. For generations, Black women have been expected to work tirelessly, often in roles that cared for others while neglecting their own needs. The luxury of rest was not afforded to our ancestors. So when we choose to rest today, we're not just caring for ourselves. We're honoring those who came before us who didn't have this choice. We're creating a new legacy for those who will come after us. Elizabeth shared a powerful exercise that I want to pass on to you. She calls it the Rest Revolution Visualization. I invite you to try it with me now. Close your eyes if you're in a safe place to do so. Take a deep breath. Now, imagine a world where Black women's rest is valued and protected. Visualize communities where our need for downtime is respected, where our boundaries are honored, where our well-being is prioritized. See yourself in this world fully rested, radiant, powerful. How does it feel in your body? What becomes possible for you in this reality? Hold on to that feeling. That's the world we're creating, one restful moment at a time. As we start to wrap up, I want to leave you with a challenge. For the next week, I want you to prioritize one small act of rest each day. It could be a 5-minute meditation, a phone-free lunch break, or saying no to an optional commitment that doesn't serve you. Whatever it is, do it intentionally and without guilt. Notice how it affects your energy, your mood, and your interactions with others. Remember, this isn't about perfection. There will be days when rest feels impossible, when the demands of life seem overwhelming. That's okay. The goal isn't to radically overhaul your life overnight. It's to start shifting your mindset, to begin seeing rest not as a luxury or an indulgence, but as an essential part of your well being and success. Now, let's bring this home with a call to action that I hope will resonate in your bones and spark a fire in your soul. To every black woman listening, to every person who has felt the weight of the world on their shoulders, I say this: your rest is not negotiable. It is not a reward to be earned or a luxury to be afforded only to others. Your rest is your birthright, a fundamental human need as essential as the air you breathe and the water you drink. I challenge you to make rest a revolutionary act in your life. Start small if you must, but start today. Take that power pause. Set that rest boundary. Ask yourself what you need and honor the answer. And as you do, know that you're not just changing your life, you're changing the world. Because when we rest, we resist. We resist the systems that have profited from our exhaustion. We resist the narratives that tie our worth to our productivity. We resist the generational trauma that has told us we must always be strong, always be giving, always be doing. When we rest, we heal. We heal ourselves, our communities, and the wounds of our ancestors. We create space for joy, for creativity, for love to flourish. We model for our children a new way of being, one that values wholeness over hustle. When we rest, we rise. We rise into our power, our purpose, our fullest potential. We rise as leaders, as creators, as the architects of a new world, a world where everyone's right to rest is recognized and respected. So I invite you, no, I implore you to join this rest revolution. Let's create a world where Black women's rest is sacred, where our boundaries are respected, where our well being is a priority. Let's challenge the status quo, disrupt the systems that have kept us running on empty, and redefine what success and power look like. Imagine a world where we are all well rested, where we operate from a place of abundance rather than scarcity, where we have the energy to pursue our dreams and lift others as we climb. That's the world we can create, one restful moment at a time. It starts with you. It starts now. Your rest is resistance. Your rest is revolutionary. Your rest is your right. Embrace it, celebrate it, and watch how it transforms not just your life, but the world around you. Remember the words of Audre Lorde: caring for myself is not self indulgence, it is self preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. Let your rest be your act of warfare against a world that has for too long profited from your exhaustion. So go forth and rest, my sisters. Rest deeply, rest unapologetically, rest revolutionarily. And as you do, know that you are part of a movement, a revolution, a transformation. You are reclaiming your power, one restful breath at a time. The world is waiting for the fully rested, fully empowered you. It's time to answer the call: rest, recharge, and rise. The revolution begins with your rest. Thank you.